Join host Patrick Keneally, Food Service Director for Capital Region BOCES and Public and Legislation Chair for New York SNA, as he welcomes Eric Bush from Saratoga Springs School District and Naeem Walcott from West Hampton Beach School District. This episode dives into the challenges and innovations in school nutrition, particularly focusing on community eligibility provisions, aka CEP, and its impact on school districts. Discussions include Saratoga Springs' unique approach to funding free meals for students and the increase in meal participation and satisfaction as a result. The episode also highlights the importance of equitable access to nutritious food for all students, the administrative burdens of current systems, and the need for sustainable funding models to ensure no child is left hungry.
Hey, I'd like to welcome everyone to the second installment of the Healthy School Meals for All podcast. I'm your host today, Patrick Keneally, School Lunch Director for Capital Region BOCES and Public Policy Chair for New York State School Nutrition. I'm joined today by Eric Bush, Senior School Lunch Director for Saratoga Springs School District, and Naeem Walcott, Director of West Hampton Beach School District and President-elect of the New York State School Nutrition, within hours becoming president. So we are very excited to have him with us today. Today, the goal of the podcast has been to discuss how we really need to see healthy meals for all in New York. There are winners and losers in the CEP program. We had a big win with the USDA dropping the ISP threshold to 25%, yet people are still left out. And really what it comes down to is school districts, communities, kids, families, everyone wins when everyone eats. And, Eric's Saratoga Schools did a really cool thing when the federal waivers went away and we went back to the free reduced or CEP model. Saratoga decided to pick up the slack themselves. So, Eric, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So in that year, it looked like it was ending. It looked like nothing was coming through the Fed or state. So at that time, we started back to normal, free, paid, reduced applications through September. Into October, we looked at our excess fund, we looked at the ESSER grant, and tried to figure out a way that we could offer free meals to all students and cover it. With the reimbursement rate, what it was, with what we had in our excess fund, it looked like we could cover it. So it went to the board, we worked with state ed. There was a waiver that was put out about that time through USDA to allow us to use the excess fund. We knew we could use the ESSER grant to use it, and we were able to provide it starting, I think it was October 31st that year. It cost about $1 million to fund it ourselves, $700 through the grant, $300 from the excess fund, and it was great. Participation went up, satisfaction went up, and we were able to do it. We had just this year squeaked by at 26%, 26.8 for CEP, which was great as well. But I know there's a lot of districts that aren't there. We're close, but not making it. But there's got to be a way, right?
Right.
And every year's been different since COVID, but you see the need for it.
Right. I think if anything showed us during COVID is programs were successful even in COVID because everyone was eating. And I think it's, the red tape bureaucracy involved, and unfortunately in school food, it, put an end to it. But it was the model's there. Everyone benefits when everyone eats. People were reinvesting in their programs. People were being able to be innovative. Farm to school programs were popping up in districts where they weren't. I oversee 3 small rural schools. 2 of them were CEP when I started, and 1 just became CEP. And I had an issue with the one school that wasn't CEP asking why I didn't do as many fun programs. And I said, because not everyone's eating. So as a parent and as a culinarian, it's hard to do a cool, fun, special meal. And you have kids tipping their head into the cafeteria being like, oh, that looks really good. And you're like, you can have a meal. And they're like, no, I already have a high balance. My mom said I can't charge anymore. And, it's heartbreaking. And it's just, with all the passion all the directors have across the state and, everyone just doing what they can we're here for the kids. To knowingly have kids that don't participate is heartbreaking. And I know there's lots of schools down on Long Island that are still going to be left out of the equation.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We just got approved at the 25% threshold, like 25% point, 25, if you will. And that's for my whole district, which is wonderful. But the other real reality and what is really actually playing out with the 25% threshold is you have school districts that are getting buildings that are qualified, which is great. You get the building qualified. But now explain that to the parent who has multiple children in a district. So it's like, okay, your middle school, if you're in the middle school, you're eating for free. When you go to the high school, you go to the elementary school, well, now you have to pay. So it sends a very, very mixed message. The other reality to it is we know that kids that are fed do and perform better in school. That's just across the board. It's not anything that you need. You don't have to dig far to find facts to justify it, facts. But the other part to it is when you start asking some questions about equity and about inclusion, once we got rid of this program where meals were universally free, we just threw it back onto American families in a way that was unfair, in my personal opinion. And also at a time where inflation was the highest. So not only are districts scrambling to try to get this money to help feed all of their kids, but what happened after we were universally free, and then we had a year where we had to pay, as you had already alluded to, negative balance debt ballooned. It went skyrocket. It literally skyrocketed. And so one of the things that I think that is a little bit nuanced that I think a lot of people don't know about with school nutrition is that school nutrition is paid for by school nutrition. It's not coming from the general fund. So when we're bringing in all of these meals, we are generating income that goes directly back into the program. Better food, more education, more diverse programs, as you alluded to, and it creates a real food culture that benefits the children, which is what we're here, what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think the old free and reduced model just perpetuated a system where you just did what you could to get by.
Yeah.
And no one wins when you're just doing the bare minimum to get by.
Yeah.
And, students, whether they're in a rural school, an urban school, suburban school, everyone, the information access for students is beyond anything they've had before. So they're watching Food Network. They're watching these TikTok videos of these viral recipes. We owe it to them to feed food that they're seeing. Regardless of the scratch cooking efforts we make, like chicken patty or chicken tender day is always going to be a high participation day.
Yes.
I'm never going to fight that battle.
Yeah.
But on the other day, why not do a culturally relevant meal that, kids in a rural area may have never heard of the country or know the food? We just did for National School Lunch Week. We had kids in Hartford eating local cabbage, kimchi.
Awesome.
We had kids in Cambridge having chicken shawarma with like a fresh garlic sauce.
That's awesome.
And it's like, as a culinarian, it's great. Like, the number might not be the highest, but if 350 kids out of the 400 that ate took the shawarma, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And to think that there's school districts that can't do that because they're just trying to get by, they're trying to mitigate student debt. And the school we did the shawarma in, they were not CEP last year. And a district that has 781 kids, we had $36,000 in student debt.
Wow.
And every parent I talked to was, you funded it during the pandemic, you can figure out how to fund it now.
Yeah.
And that's when you have the conversation. Well, we're not part of the district. Your taxpayer dollars don't go to directly my program.
Yeah.
I'm self-funding myself.
Yeah.
And I want to give your kids the best thing I can. And now that they're CEP, our ADP is up. We're offering more alternatives because everyone can eat. I'm not worried about oh, if I make chicken shawarma and
No one's gonna
100 kids show up, no one's coming to the cafeteria.
exactly.
Now they're willing to try things. And it's like across the state, how can we leave schools out like this? I know with the dropping to 25% ISP, I want to say the rough numbers now are 750 to 1,000 schools will still be left out. Like, how can we leave that many students out still?
Yeah.
And, you know, here we think from legislation is we don't want to feed rich kids. Well, you give rich kids bus transportation for free. You give them technology in schools for free. There's equity and inclusion in every school program except school nutrition.
Right.
So you're going to, in New York, we're all about equity and inclusion. And when it comes to food, that's when we're going to draw the economic status card.
Yeah, and you know, you might be able to speak more on this as well, but we call it school nutrition for a reason. And so the other factor that goes into this is, so let's say you take that meal away from a child. Well, and let's say that it is a low income family that isn't eating a lot at home. Well, now when they go home, the only nutritious meal that they're going to get is probably not going to be as nutritious as what we serve. So you start dealing with some of these issues when you're talking about obesity, hormone development. All of these different things are growth factors that are required for a kid to mature and develop properly. So when we're talking school nutrition, we're talking about school almost medication, because that's what it is. It's the consumption of good, healthy food raises strong, healthy-minded, healthy-bodied children. It promotes that across the board. So when you expand the conversation just a little bit, because if you go to the doctor and they say, you know, you need to take this pill to make your blood pressure go down, well, hey, you know, you're going to come into our cafeteria and we're going to help make sure that we're not giving you too much sugar and we're not giving you too much sodium. We're making sure you're getting whole grains. You know, school nutrition is and it's been quoted a number of different times as the most heavily prepared, thought out, bid for, like it is a program that literally every T and I is dotted. So for example, this year I'm going through an administrative review. They're going to be looking at my procurement. They're going to be looking at my menu. They're going to be looking at my purchasing. They're going to review my labels to make sure that I'm giving kids nutritious, healthy breakfasts and lunch. Why wouldn't we do that for every kid?
Yeah. When you say it like that, it's how can there be an argument against feeding kids healthy, nutritious food in a school?
Yeah.
When it's required that they go there.
Yeah.
That we're requiring them to go there, and you're going to say, oh, your parents worked a little overtime last year, so you're $400 over the income threshold.
Exactly.
And you now have to pay your meals, and you're either going to accrue student debt, or we had a family take out a personal loan to pay their, and it's like, how do you, like,
Wow.
you can't, and they're in a rural community where I buy the vegetables from. So these kids are going home to work on their family farms, and we can't give them they can't eat for free in the school. And it's like, this system is broken, you know, through dropping to 25% ISP and the state subsidy. We're getting there for those CEP schools, but no child should be left out of the school nutrition program, regardless of what their home economic status is. It's a safe place. The cafeteria is a place of inclusion. Like, that's where they get to interact with their peers the most.
Yeah.
And we're going to put stigma into that for them.
We have, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Sorry I interrupted you.
No, when I look at it as it's a puzzle we need to figure out, right? It's a battle every day. If we don't keep talking about the shore up from the state, it could go away. What does that mean? I know it means a loss of $1 million for Saratoga if that state shore up isn't in the budget every year. What it means for our students is maybe they're just buying on Fridays and it's pizza. They're not trying other things. They're not trying chicken shawarma or getting Cheerios that day because, they only get one breakfast and they buy on Fridays on pizza day too. You know, it's that mix and figuring out, okay, what does free meals mean? Okay, it's participation. It's also how much food and what we can put back into the program for the students so we can give them extra food. It's one thing we did at Saratoga. We loaded them up. We gave them stuff so that they could take snacks home if they wanted to. Take all the components, grab everything. If you're not hungry now and can't eat it, put it in your bag for later. It was an abundance of food for them at breakfast and lunch, and it carried them. But that participation went up, and we were able to put more into the food, more into the program, and I feel like give back more. But that's because the reimbursement rate is finally, after, I don't know, I've been in schools on and off for 20 years, and this is the highest I've ever seen. And you can see it in the quality of food that we're able to provide to students.
Yeah. And to that point on the quality, farm to school is a really big deal. So with higher reimbursement, everybody eating free, that gives me the ability to invest in more locally sourced foods and produce. On Long Island, produce locally grown is very expensive, very, very expensive. But as a whole, New York State produce is probably a little bit more than what you pay elsewhere. But I'm happy to buy something that comes down the road or comes down from upstate. And with that higher participation, that reimbursement rate coming in, that allows me to do that. Every year we have, if you're a paid district, you have to do something called paid lunch equity. So my paid lunch equity brings me in at $3.25. The $3.25 is what I charge for a school lunch in my district under the old method. That has to pay for the food, the labor, the plates, the administration, any medical benefits for staff, any equipment. That's all in that $3.25. And it sounds like a little, because it is little. But going up to a reimbursement rate of $4.33, that goes across and does something that can literally transform any program. And who are you transforming it for? Well, we're transforming it for the kids.
Yeah.
We're bringing in local produce, which benefits the area. We're establishing a food culture because, now we can play on the menu a little bit more. There's a little bit more, and guess what? With greater participation, they trust us more. You're getting more interaction, and now you're developing a food culture.
The trust is huge. That's the buy-in the kids have when they're getting not processed 5 days a week.
Yep.
Like I said, chicken nuggets,
Yep.
chicken patties, never going away.
Yep.
And they're great because they drive with the CEP reimbursement. That's a big driver. That allows you to buy the other items. And I know being able to be in a CEP district where I'm not focused on that administrative burden, it frees me up to look for grant opportunities. Like we're utilizing the local food for school grant. So for school lunch week, I bought New York State chicken breasts, which were $14 a pound, but I'm getting dollar for dollar reimbursement.
Yeah.
So I can go to that local farm and say, hey, we're gonna put your chicken in front of 500 kids at Cambridge in a Middle Eastern application.
There you go.
And the mayor showed up to eat lunch with the kids.
There
It's
you go.
great.
That's
Like
Yeah.
when moving the needle just a little bit in our sector now is life-changing to these kids. And, hopefully the needle moves a little faster, a little more, but I've learned in my little baby 3 years in full school food, that the little needle movements have to be celebrated.
Absolutely.
And they are huge, they are
Absolutely.
impactful, and the kids, whether the kids say it to you, it's felt in the school. When you're putting out if you do a quick scratch item and it's, oh, that doesn't look like the boil in the bag stuff, but it was a quick scratch. It was a value-added cheese sauce with a New York State pasta. Like, that's a celebration. Like, you've taken a great step for staff that haven't always had a culinary-driven school nutrition program.
It's true.
And when every kid is participating or has the ability to participate,
Right.
that's what drives it.
Absolutely.
They'll try different things. It's not that,
Right.
oh, I have $3.25 for one day to buy. I'm buying on pizza day. If it's free across the board, they're going to try different things. They're
Yeah.
going to come in, they're going to participate. Maybe they don't like it. Maybe they do. But at least they try something different and are in it. Once you run it again and try it again, it might move that needle a little bit, and each time, and then, after a couple months, they're looking for that item. They're looking for that local product. They're looking for the scratch cooked items because they tried it once or twice, but they wouldn't have if they were only, had enough money to buy once or twice a week. And they're cutting that out on a New York Thursday or something where they just don't have the money to buy that day.
Yeah.
And I had students at Hartford approach me. They were working for their 6th grade class, they're working on a legislative idea.
Okay.
And the ideas they had would be a little lot of legalities into. They wanted to do something with leftover food, sending it home to families, and I was like, guys, that's I can't really help you with that. But I was like, hey, you know, we're working on trying to get healthy school meals for all students in New York. Like, you guys get free lunch here. And they just looked at me dumbfounded. They're like, wait, every school doesn't get free food?
Right.
I was like, no, districts just down the road from you don't get a free lunch.
Yeah.
So there's kids, and they went on the internet, they pulled up the Healthy School Meals for All website. They got all the data, so they're presenting it to the local YMCA as that they want. They're going to join us for lobby day, and they don't know any of the kids in the other districts that aren't getting food, that aren't participating. But they have now taken upon themselves, because they're like, we have a great food program here, and we get to participate daily regardless.
Yeah.
And you're telling me that people I play soccer against, people I play baseball against, they don't have the same they don't have the same access to the program. And
They know the value of it,
Right.
without really knowing anybody else, or the district situation, or the family situation. They just know the value in the program.
And you know, it's interesting because I like what you had said about maintaining that we keep it. Because, like in your analogy, right now, that analogy is playing out like this: Johnny is in building A, Betty is in building C, and one of them pays and one of them doesn't. So it's not even district to district. It's within districts right now because of the way that it's written. But the chaos that will ensue if this isn't maintained and backed up, you know, it's only going to affect the children, who a few years ago, we had legislation coming out that was anti-lunch shaming. When the rules went away and we had to go back to paid, we were lunch shaming. You know, and I said it to my building administrators as well. I said, I don't have a way to even protect the kid on the line from this, because just your transaction, are you giving money or not giving money, is telling me what you are.
They know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Especially at breakfast. They, you know, some kids stay on the bus. All the poor kids, you can get off the
Yeah,
bus and go
right.
get breakfast. Like,
Listen,
how do you, that's terrible.
We had it, and so a little simple story there. I remember it was probably my third year, right? So I was dealing with an administrator that wasn't really hearing what I was saying, and I said, okay. So I brought the data. I brought the sheets, and I'm like, you are letting the kids off in the bus in the morning. I understand that, to get breakfast. So at the beginning of the year, I have 5th grade, 4th grade, 3rd grade, 2nd grade, kindergarten, all getting off the bus in different numbers, and they're getting breakfast. It's not a lot, but that's what it is. Now, all of those kids eat lunch. All of them eat lunch. But by about 2 or 3 months in, the only kids getting off the bus to get breakfast are the kindergartners. Because the stigma, the older kids picked it up a lot quicker.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as we went to free meals, not only were the quote-unquote paid kid, not only were the free and reduced kids, but the paid kids were eating as well, because the stigma was gone. Everybody eats. Doesn't matter.
Yep.
Everybody eats. Do you like it? That was the conversation. We don't really like this one. Okay, well, we're going to try something else now.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a question of, who had and who didn't have. We were all just eating. And as kids, that's what it should be. Just a little side, my concept of schools is always Camelot, right? So we always think of King Arthur and his knights. School is the place where life should be demonstrated in the most fair and equitable manner. That's what we're teaching kids. You want to eat a good meal, so you perform well, you take care of your body well. Why would we inhibit that in any way? And so what we're talking about here is a win, but it's a cautious one, because there is this feeling in the air like, wait a second, we need to get every kid this opportunity. And that's what we're trying to do.
Shouldn't be based on who's getting voted in, where it's coming from. To your example, we're all dealing with the same issues, right? If you're dealing with little roadblocks or road bumps, preventing students from coming in and getting a meal for breakfast, if it's holding them on the bus, if it's an aide saying, did you eat breakfast already? Okay, you can go to class and not go down and grab something. That shouldn't be there. But we need to be at the table, talking, being in on the conversation through every district, saying there can't be roadblocks, there can't be bumps for any meal, for the funding. across the board for any reason.
Yeah.
I think one of the cool things about even just this new platform with the podcast is we're going to be expanding the conversation beyond just school nutrition directors. Like, parents need to be involved, and they need to make their voices heard to their elected representatives, building administrators, purchasing officials. The conversation that we're having here is finally getting a larger audience. And I think with new awareness will come even more advocacy. And I think that's what we need right now.
Getting
It's-
the info out there.
Yeah, it's
getting everybody
definitely
to buy in on it.
if our story isn't told, someone else is going to tell it for us, and they don't have the information.
have the information.
And I think that's one of the big things I've taken from my 3 years is I had absolutely no idea how a school nutrition program ran
Yeah.
prior to becoming part of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's jumping into the advocacy side of it for me was, even though I'm new, my voice still matters. And I think, advocacy is kind of a scary thing. You're talking to legislators, elected officials, but the most impact outside of, the scratch cooking I'm trying to do in Farm to School, the most impactful moments I've had are with those legislators. And maybe it's a slight light bulb go on for one of them because they don't know how school nutrition runs. They're not going to come out and say, I don't want to feed kids, but they're going to find every way to fund it this way, that way. So we're getting farther from what we need, which is just New York kids need to have equitable access to breakfast and lunch while in school.
Yeah.
And I think, as we expand the conversation, like you said, more directors need to feel empowered to reach out to their officials and be like, this is the program I run. I'm extremely proud of it. I am not a CEP district. This is the hurdles I have. And here's all the data from the CEP districts that are out there that look at this farm to school program, and they're equating it to the ability to feed everyone.
Right.
Like, equitable access is equitable access. And
Yes.
we can't have a New York conversation about New York being a leader in all these different areas of being a New Yorker when we aren't taking care of our children
Exactly.
that are in school.
Exactly. And, one of the other tidbits in here is the CEP thing, so community eligibility provision. This is happening because we don't have universal meals at no charge in this country. So states are trying to figure out ways of doing it and working it out. So, I applaud New York even in taking the steps. But like you're saying, more needs to be done. And we need to find a way to really make it sure-footed so that we're not saying, well, what's going to happen this year? What's going to happen next year? I know, especially with COVID, a lot of my peers, we were in 3 different programs. We were in the summer feeding, and then you're swapping, trying to just jostle, and that was a very, very arduous time. But the mandate hasn't changed. So during COVID, things were rough, and we all understand that. And right now, there's a lot of inflation. There's things going on in the world. But the job hasn't changed. We're still just trying to feed and nourish children. It's a constant. It doesn't turn off. And I always I said, this is a show that is not allowed to end. You know what I mean? Johnny needs to eat. And if we're taking the conversation into its most extreme version, right? So the worst case scenario, this kid is it's a family that has no money, no food. They are insecure for nutrition. Should we be feeding those kids? If there's 10 of them in a district, shouldn't we be feeding those kids? I mean, that's it. That's the bottom line. So what is your threshold? You're going to tell me that it's because we all know there's a lot of families out there that drive very, very nice cars, but they're not making a lot of money. And I'm not here to speak about how people manage their money. The only thing I'm interested in is feeding kids nutritious, healthy food and taking away the barriers. So.
Right. You don't know what's going on at home.
Yeah.
You don't know the situation. It at that point it shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Right. The whole application process, the whole free, reduce, numbers that are made up that come down. I mean right. Just we need to move past. Just
we know.
Right. It's a 50-year-old system that we know doesn't work anymore.
I think that for me was the biggest roadblock joining school nutrition was the distance between producing a meal and a student actually eating the meal was just insane to me. And it's like, I've dedicated the last 15 years of my life to being a chef, and you're telling me I have to jump through this hoop, that hoop, climb over this roadblock just so Sally and Johnny can have a farm to school, well-prepared lunch. And it's like, I couldn't believe it. And that was why I wanted to get into public policy.
I actually know a couple of districts that left the National School Lunch Program so that they could operate however they saw fit. But yeah, if you want to serve a school lunch, more times than not, the food items on that plate have been bid. They have to be bid, proper USDA procurement, 3 different bidders for everything. Your ketchup packets, your trays, your sanitizing solution, your chicken patties. It doesn't matter what it is. Everything's going through a bidding process that has to be publicized. That bid is then going to be, are we wrapping up?
You can go.
That bidding process then has to get vetted through your district auditors. So by the time, so now you have an approved vendor. Okay, so now I'm going to order some food from this person. Okay, great. So now I'm going to put it in an order. I'm going to have to wait to receive that order. Now, for the vendor to get the check, not only am I verifying the order, but now it has to go to my business office. It's going to have to get audited there and compared to the bid. And that's going to go to somebody else. And then eventually down the road, you'll cut a check. To order anything in a school district, to serve anything in a school district, it's like 10 different steps just to procure the item. That's not talking about the labor. That's not talking about the food prep. That's not talking about the administration end of it. So that's the job. And that's one of the beautiful things about school nutrition professionals. It's one of the things I love about our people. I'm going to say it like that, my people, like that might be a little too extra, but it's the truth. We get challenges, and the scope of our challenges is distilled to one thing. And I said this morning at our general session, feeding kids. So we figure it out and we do our best to feed kids. But at the same time, we're also seeing the gaps. And some of those gaps are the fact that kids are being denied this, Anthony Bourdain used to use the word ubiquitous, this ubiquitous right to eat good, healthy, nourishing food. And this is a barrier. And we need to get after it to eliminate that barrier. So.
Well, I want to thank Eric and Naeem for joining me today. I think we can all agree that Healthy Meals for All is an important step for school nutrition programs and for students in New York. We've seen some successes with the New York State subsidy and the lowering of the ISP to 25%. So many more people are getting a chance at the table to serve universal meals in their schools, but that still leaves around 1,000 schools left out of the equation, and that's just not right. So I encourage everyone listening to the podcast, if you're a NISTA member, advocate on behalf of your program, advocate on behalf of your students, your families, your community. We need your voices. Every voice matters. No story is too small to tell about all of the hard work we do, as Naeem said, just to feed children. So thank you very much, guys, and have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.